My family left me standing in the rain when I had nothing, but years later, they came back begging for help. Stay with me as I share how I stood up and showed him what family really means. And if this story moves you, don't forget to support our channel. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and share it with your loved one. Amélie Dlamini had just turned 27, fresh out of university, full of hope, and ready to step into the world she had worked so hard for. Lusaka's evening sky had already darkened when she received the call that would shake her confidence. Her first job, the one she had dreamed about since graduation, was gone. The weight of disappointment pressed on her chest, and she immediately thought of her family, imagining they would offer comfort, maybe even a shoulder to cry on. She rushed to their home, drenched in a mix of fear and hope, umbrella forgotten, heart pounding. But when she rang the doorbell, what met her was far from the warmth she expected. Her parents, absorbed in their own lives, barely looked up, and her older siblings gave nothing but cold stares. Before she could explain, they shut the door in her face. Outside, the rain poured without mercy, soaking her clothes, chilling her to the bone. Every drop felt like a reminder that the people she thought she could rely on didn't care. From the porch, she saw Tendai, her younger cousin, leaning lazily against the wall, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. His amusement at her misery stung more than the rain. That night, shivering and humiliated, Amélie stood alone under the storm, her dreams feeling as battered as her soaked shoes. But inside her, a small fire flickered. She silently promised herself that this night, this rejection, would not define her. No amount of ridicule, no act of betrayal would take away her worth. If anything, this storm would become the first test of her strength. Amélie spent that cold, rainy night wondering where she would go. With no job, no money, and now no home, the world suddenly felt too big and too harsh. But as she wiped her tears and tried to catch her breath, one name came to her mind, Mama Chipo. She had been her mentor since school days, a woman known across Lusaka for helping young women stand again after life pushed them down. With nothing left to lose, Amélie walked through the quiet, wet streets until she reached the small community center Mama Chipo ran. When she stepped inside, shaking and drenched, Mama Chipo didn't ask a single question. She simply wrapped a blanket around Amélie's shoulders and said, "My child, storms don't break strong women. They reveal them." Those words became the first piece of hope Amélie had felt in hours. Over the next days, the community center became her temporary home, a modest building with worn floors, simple beds, and the warm energy of women who had survived their own battles. Amélie listened to their stories, realizing she wasn't alone. Every morning, Mama Chipo gathered the women for lessons on survival, how to stretch a little money for weeks, how to manage finances with discipline, how to build confidence, how to talk to people who could open doors. These weren't just lessons, they were tools for a new life. Amélie soaked up everything. She learned how to budget every single kwacha, how to search for opportunities others often ignored, and how to network without fear. She started helping around the center, cleaning, organizing supplies, even helping other girls with writing resumes. Slowly, she began to feel useful again. But the biggest change came when she discovered online work. With an old laptop from the center and free Wi-Fi that lagged but still worked, she explored small ways to earn money, designing handmade crafts, selling digital prints, offering simple services to people in Lusaka and beyond. Every time she made even a small amount, she saved it. No luxury, no spending, nothing unnecessary. She was building something bigger than today. Her family, on the other hand, assumed she had disappeared from their lives. They continued their gossip, telling others she probably failed somewhere and would come crawling back. They didn't know she was learning to stand taller than ever. They didn't know she was creating a life brick by brick, quietly and patiently. They didn't know she had found a strength she never knew existed. At night, when the community center fell silent, Amélie would sit by the window and whisper to herself, "One day they will see me. One day they will regret leaving me in the rain." But she didn't say it with bitterness. She said it with determination. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was rebuilding. She was becoming someone they would never expect, and someone they would never be able to ignore. Amélie's first real step toward independence began with an idea so small she almost ignored it. While helping around the community center, she often made little handmade crafts, woven bracelets, beaded earrings, decorated journals. She had always been good with her hands, but she never thought it could become anything more than a hobby. One evening, Mama Chipo looked at her work and said, "My child, these are not small things. These are seeds. Plant them." Those words pushed her into action. With the little money she had saved, she bought a few basic supplies from a local market and set up a tiny workspace in a corner of the community center. It wasn't a fancy studio, just a wooden table, a stool, and her determination. She created her first batch of products and took photos using her old phone. Then, with courage trembling inside her, she posted them online and visited local markets to display her design. The beginning was tough, brutally tough. Some shop owners laughed at her prices. Others tried to scam her, offering tiny amounts for pieces that took her hours to make. A few customers promised to pay later and disappeared. There were days when she would return to the community center with unsold items, her heart heavy with doubt. But every time she felt like giving up, the memory of that stormy night flashed in her mind. The cold rain, the closed door, Tendai's smirk. That pain became her fuel. She told herself she would never again stand helpless in front of anyone's door. Slowly, things started to change. A tourist bought a bracelet and shared it on social media. A local boutique ordered a small batch. A woman at a cafe stopped her to ask where she got her earrings, only to learn Amelie made them herself. People began noticing her unique designs, African patterns mixed with modern colors, bold but elegant styles that carried her personality in every detail. Her customer list grew one person at a time. With every sale, she reinvested her earnings. She bought better tools, improved her packaging, and even created a tiny brand name that she hand-stamped onto every bag. Her confidence grew with each step, but she stayed quiet about her progress. Not a single word reached her family. They still assumed she was somewhere struggling, maybe still homeless, maybe still lost. Amelie let them believe it. It wasn't because she wanted revenge. It was because she had learned a powerful lesson. Success grows stronger when it grows silently. She wasn't ready for their fake concern or their criticism. She wanted to build something steady first, something they couldn't tear down with a few careless words. At night, after long days of crafting and selling, she would sit on her small bed at the center and smile to herself. She wasn't rich. She wasn't famous. But she was building. She was rising. Every bracelet, every earring, every handmade piece was proof that she was no longer the woman who shivered in the rain. She was becoming someone unstoppable, one craft, one customer, and one quiet victory at a time. It didn't take long for whispers to travel back to Amelie's family. Lusaka was big, but gossip moved faster than any bus or taxi. Someone had seen her at a craft market, another had bought earrings from her page, and soon the rumors reached her parents' house. Amelie is doing something. She's selling handmade products. She might actually be doing well. But instead of being happy for her, her siblings, Nkosi and Zanil, spun the story into mockery. At every family gathering, they laughed loudly, telling relatives, "Oh please, she's still jobless and hopeless. Selling beads on the street is not success." Their cousins joined in, snickering as if her small steps were a joke. Even Tendai, always ready to drag her name down, added extra spice. "Don't be fooled. She's just pretending. She'll come begging soon." Amelie heard everything. People came to her and repeated what her family said, expecting her to break down or lash out. But she didn't. She had learned by now that silence was stronger than shouting. Instead of wasting time defending herself, she poured all her energy into her. Every insult became motivation. Every rumor became fuel. Her business kept growing slowly but surely. Her designs gained attention from boutiques, social media pages, and small businesses looking for unique handmade gifts. Orders increased until she could no longer handle everything alone. That's when she took her next bold step, hiring help. She returned to the same community center where she had once slept on a thin mattress and gathered a group of young women who were struggling just like she once did. Some had no parents. Some had been kicked out of their homes. Some had dreams but no support. Looking at them was like looking at versions of herself from different timelines. She knew what they needed: opportunity, training, and someone who believed in them. Amelie taught them the skills she had learned the hard way: how to craft with precision, how to budget, how to talk to customers, how to carry themselves with confidence. The small workspace that once held only her now buzzed with laughter, music, and creativity. She saw leadership growing inside her naturally. She didn't need to force it. She guided, encouraged, corrected gently, and celebrated every little improvement the girls made. Meanwhile, her family continued their smear campaign. At barbecues and weddings, they publicly joked, "Maybe she'll make us matching bracelets. That's the only thing she can afford." They tried to keep her image small so they could feel big. But the truth was shifting, and they didn't realize it. Because while they were busy laughing, Amelie was building. While they were trying to tear her down, she was lifting others up. While they mocked her little business, she was creating a brand, a team, and a purpose far stronger than any of their insults. And deep down inside, she knew the day was coming when their laughter would turn into silence, when her reality would speak louder than their lies. She didn't need to prove anything. Her time was coming, and when it arrived, it would be impossible for them to ignore. Amelie's life changed the day she opened her email and saw a message from the organizers of the Lusaka National Art Fair. At first, she thought it was spam. Why would such a big event contact someone like? But as she read it again, her heart raced. They had seen her products online, loved her unique African modern designs, and wanted her to exhibit at their upcoming fair, one of the biggest in the country. It felt unreal. She had spent so many nights doubting herself, and now the opportunity she never dared to dream about was right in front of her. The weeks leading up to the fair were intense. She and her team of young women worked late into the night, crafting new pieces, experimenting with fresh patterns, and perfecting every detail. They packed every item with care because this wasn't just another market, this was a national stage. Emily wanted to show the world what rising from pain looked like. The day of the fair finally arrived. The event grounds were buzzing with music, colorful stalls, and buyers from all over Zambia. Emily's booth stood out with its warm colors, handcrafted displays, and products that looked like they carried stories within them. People stopped, admired, asked questions, and bought. In just the first few hours, she sold more items than she usually sold in an entire week. But the biggest moment came when Liam Bonda approached her booth. He was well known in Lusaka, a successful entrepreneur, investor, and owner of several upscale boutiques. People often talked about him with a mix of respect and admiration. Emily recognized him immediately, but tried to stay calm. He picked up one of her beadwork necklaces, studied it closely, and said, "This is remarkable. Who trained you?" Emily smiled softly. "Life did, mostly." He laughed, impressed by both her honesty and her talent. After browsing through her collection, he asked her a question she never expected. "Have you ever thought about scaling this? Expanding beyond Lusaka?" Her heart nearly jumped out of her chest. She explained her ideas, opening workshops, training more women, selling in different cities, maybe even exporting one day. Liam listened carefully, nodding with interest. When she finished, he said, "I want to invest. You have something special here, and I believe it can become one of the biggest craft brands in Southern Africa." The world seemed to pause for a moment. Emily felt a rush of emotions, pride, relief, joy, and disbelief blending all at once. She had gone from standing alone in the rain with nothing to being offered an investment by one of the most respected business figures in Zambia. As the fair continued, her booth stayed crowded. Journalists took photos. Buyers placed large orders. Other business owners asked for partnerships. By the end of the day, Emily had sold out completely. That night, lying in her small bed at the community center, she stared at the ceiling with a quiet smile. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was rising at full speed. She began sketching plans for expansion into Ndola, Kitwe, and later Gaborone and Johannesburg. And somewhere in her heart, without bitterness but with clarity, she whispered to herself, "One day my family will understand what they threw away. One day they will see what their cruelty created." It wasn't revenge she wanted. It was recognition of her strength, the strength they never believed she had. Years passed, and Emily's life looked nothing like the girl who once stood shivering in the rain. She now lived in a bright, modern home filled with handmade decor she and her team had created. Her business had grown across cities, her name appeared in magazines, and she had built a life she once thought was impossible. But while her world blossomed, her family's world quietly crumbled. One quiet afternoon, as Emily was reviewing expansion plans, she heard a knock at her gate. She expected a delivery or one of her staff, but when she checked the security camera, her breath caught in her throat. It was her family, her parents, her siblings, and even Tendai. They stood there looking worn out, nervous, nothing like the proud, dismissive clan she remembered. Their clothes were tired, faces stressed, and their usual arrogance had melted into desperation. Emily opened the gate slowly, her heart steady and unreadable. The moment they saw her, their eyes softened with a mix of relief and guilt. Tendai stepped forward first, rubbing the back of his neck like a child caught misbehaving. "Cousin, we just wanted to talk," he said quietly, nothing like the boy who once smirked at her misery. Nkosi followed, forcing a sad smile. "Things have been difficult. Business collapsed. Debts everywhere. He stopped, swallowing hard. "We need help." Her mother, who once shut the door in her face, wiped her eyes and whispered, "Emily, please. We know we failed you, but we want to fix things." Emily stood still, her expression calm but unreadable. She wasn't eager, she wasn't angry, she was simply watching, observing, understanding. The image of her standing in the pouring rain, begging for a little compassion, flashed in her mind as if it had happened yesterday. She remembered how the cold seeped into her bones, how the humiliation burned, how their laughter and indifference became the fire that fueled her success. And now here they were, standing on her doorstep, soaked not in rain but in regret. Her father cleared his throat. "We want reconciliation, my daughter. We want to make peace." But his words were shaky, almost rehearsed. Emily didn't respond immediately. She looked at their faces, some embarrassed, some hopeful, some simply desperate. She noticed how Tendai avoided eye contact, how her mother clutched her handbag nervously, how Nkosi's voice broke whenever he spoke. Their pain was real, but so was their pattern of using people when convenient. She breathed in deeply. "You say you've changed," she said softly. "But change is not words. It's actions." The family looked at her with pleading eyes, as if waiting for her to suddenly open her arms and erase years of cruelty. But Amelie was no longer the helpless girl in the rain. She was a woman who had rebuilt her life with her own hand. She had learned to guard her peace, and her heart was wiser now. As they stood there, desperate and uncertain, she realized something powerful. Life had done to them what they once did to her, and now the moment had arrived for her to decide, not out of revenge, but out of strength, how much room, if any, they deserved in the life she created without them. Amelie didn't rush her decision. She had learned long ago that people could pretend very well when they needed something. So instead of giving an immediate answer, she invited her family into her living room and listened carefully as they repeated their apology. Some sounded sincere, others sounded desperate, and a few sounded like they were performing for her sympathy. After a long silence, she finally said, "If you want to prove you've changed, I need to see it, not hear it." Her family looked confused. Tendai frowned slightly, and Nkosi shifted uncomfortably. But Amelie continued, her voice calm and firm. "I have 2 conditions," she said. "If you cannot do them, then we have nothing to talk about." Everyone leaned in anxious. "First, all of you must volunteer at my business for 1 month. No special treatment. You will work the same hours as everyone else, doing the same tasks my team does." The shock on their faces was immediate. Her mother gasped softly. Nkosi looked offended. Zanil's eyes widened like someone had slapped her with cold water. Tendai muttered under his breath, "Volunteer? As in work?" Amelie nodded. "Yes. Work. Learn what it takes to build something instead of mocking it." They were still processing when she gave the second condition, the one that made the room fall completely silent. "Second," she said slowly, "you must come to the community center and speak publicly about what happened. You must acknowledge how you treated me, how you left me outside in the rain, and how your actions pushed me to build my own life." Her mother covered her mouth in shock. Zanil turned red with embarrassment. Nkosi stared at the floor, ashamed. Even her father looked shaken, as if the idea of announcing their past cruelty in public was too humiliating. Amelie watched all of them with a steady gaze. She wasn't trying to hurt them, she was testing them. If they truly wanted reconciliation, they would be willing to face their past. If they merely wanted financial help, they would break under the pressure. After several minutes of uncomfortable silence, her father finally asked, "Must it be public, my daughter?" "Yes," Amelie replied, "because your betrayal was public too. Everyone knew when you laughed at me. Nobody knew when I healed." Slowly, reluctantly, one by one, they agreed. We will do it," her mother said quietly. "We'll volunteer," Nkosi added through clenched teeth. Tendai forced a nod, clearly hating every second of it. But Amelie was not moved by their discomfort. Instead, she studied their faces carefully, watching their reactions like a teacher observing students during a test. She noted who showed real remorse, who looked angry, who acted only because they needed her. The next day, they arrived at her workshop, wearing cheap clothes they weren't used to, trying to smile even though embarrassment hung over them like a cloud. Amelie didn't scold or humiliate them. She simply handed them tasks and observed quietly. She watched who helped willingly. She watched who complained. She watched who tried to skip responsibilities. She watched who genuinely tried to understand the women she worked with. Every gesture told her something. Every hesitation revealed a truth. For the first time in her life, Amelie had the power, and not to crush them, but to measure them. And deep inside, she knew that this test would reveal who truly loved her, and who only loved what she had become. The day of the community event arrived with a warm breeze and bright colors everywhere. The hall was decorated with crafts made by the women Amelie mentored. Woven baskets, beaded jewelry, painted fabrics, and handmade decor that told stories of hope and resilience. People from all over Lusaka filled the space. Customers, supporters, business owners, activists, and many women who had once been lost but found strength through Amelie's work. Amelie walked through the room with calm confidence. Her team buzzed with excitement as they showcased their creations, proudly telling visitors how they transformed their lives. The atmosphere was joyful, until Amelie glanced at the front row. Her family sat together, stiff and nervous, knowing today was not just an event, it was a reckoning. When the program began, Amelie stepped onto the stage to loud applause. She spoke about growth, community, and the power of women rebuilding their lives. She highlighted every woman in her program, celebrating their courage. The audience listened with admiration and respect. But then her tone shifted. The room grew quiet as she said, "Before I built this place, before I stood here today, there was a night that changed everything." She paused and turned her gaze toward her family. People followed her eyes, and whispers began. "I want to share something personal," she continued. "Not for sympathy, but for truth." She clicked the remote, and a large screen behind her lit up with a photograph. Amelie at 27, drenched in rain, standing outside a closed door. Gasps filled the room. The image was raw, heartbreaking, and painfully clear. "That night," Emily said softly, "I lost my job. I went home hoping for support. Instead, I was left outside while the people who should have loved me laughed and turned away." The audience murmured in disbelief. Her family froze. Some bowed their heads, others stared blankly, unable to hide the shame. Emily showed journal entries next, pages filled with her shaky handwriting, describing her fear, her hunger, and her promise to herself to rise again. Then photos of her early craft work, her tiny workspace, and the women she began to mentor. The story unfolded on the screen like a movie: pain, struggle, rebuilding, and triumph. She didn't mention their names. She didn't need to. Her family's expressions told the whole truth. As the last photo faded, Emily turned fully to them and said, loud enough for the entire hall to hear, "I forgave myself before I forgave you." Respect is earned, not demanded. The hall fell silent. The weight of her words settled over everyone. Some audience members wiped tears. Others looked at her family with disappointment, even anger. Her mother began crying quietly. Nkosi's jaw tightened as he fought embarrassment. Zanil stared at the floor, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Tendai looked like he wanted to disappear. Emily didn't shout. She didn't humiliate them. Her strength was in her composure. She stepped forward and continued, "This is not to shame anyone. This is to show the journey, how betrayal can break someone or build them, and how healing begins when truth is spoken." Her words carried pain, but also hope. The audience rose in applause, not just for her success, but for her courage to confront the past with honesty and grace. In that moment, surrounded by the community she helped build, Emily finally felt the weight of her old wounds lifting. The truth was no longer hidden. The night that once almost destroyed her had now become the foundation of her greatest strength. And her family, silent, humbled, exposed, could no longer deny what they had done. They could only face the truth, just as she once had. Emily spent days thinking carefully before making her final decision about her family. She replayed everything in her mind. The night they left her outside in the rain, the painful mornings she woke up in a stranger's garage, the hunger, the humiliation, and the promise she made to herself to never depend on anyone who didn't value her. But she also remembered the people who helped her along the way, the women she later mentored, and the strength she built from every scar. So when her family completed the conditions she had set, she knew it was time to decide what came next. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. During the month they volunteered at her business, Emily watched each of them closely. Some tried to hide their old arrogance, but it leaked through in the way they complained about work or whispered to each other when they thought no one was listening. Others, however, surprised her. Her younger sister Thandi apologized to the workers she had once mocked and stayed late to help pack donation boxes. Her cousin Miso asked the women for forgiveness personally and told them she wanted to learn from Emily, not use her. These small changes mattered. Emily had learned to judge people by actions, not speeches. Still, not everyone had changed. Her older brother Themba spent most of his volunteer hours on his phone, pretending to be busy while doing nothing. Her father kept making excuses and acting as if helping out was beneath him. Even during the public acknowledgement at the community center, Emily noticed how some family members shifted uncomfortably, more embarrassed about being exposed than truly sorry for the pain they caused. She saw through all of it, and for the first time, she didn't feel hurt, only firm. When the month ended, Emily invited the entire family to her office for her decision. They sat nervously, their eyes darting around the room that was once just her dream. Emily spoke calmly and clearly, her voice steady like water that had learned its path after many storms. She said she believed in second chances, but not unlimited ones. She explained that genuine remorse came with consistent behavior, not temporary politeness. She took a deep breath and announced her choice. She would help the family members who had shown real change, those who worked with humility, who apologized without being forced, who treated her team with respect. She would mentor them, guide them, and give them a chance to rebuild their own lives just as she rebuilt her. But for the others, the ones still clinging to entitlement and manipulation, she made her boundaries clear. She told them she wished them well, but they would not have access to her resources, her business, or her life. Her decision spread quickly across Lusaka. People respected her even more, not just for her success but for her wisdom. Instead of returning bitterness with bitterness, she responded with strength and sense. Instead of letting her past pain swallow her, she turned it into a compass that guided her choices. Many young women came to her for advice, saying they admired how she protected her peace without losing her compassion. Emily didn't feel triumphant or angry. She felt free. She knew she had done the right thing, not for her family, but for herself. She wasn't seeking revenge. She was protecting what she built. She wasn't closing the door completely. She was simply controlling the key. And for the first time in years, she walked home with a calm heart, knowing her future was hers alone, shaped by her strength, not by the people who once broke her. Amelie's journey had taken her far beyond what she once imagined. Her small craft business in Lusaka had grown into a thriving brand, and now she was expanding into South Africa and Botswana. Her workshops were alive with energy. Dozens of young women worked alongside her, learning skills, earning salaries, and gaining confidence that went far beyond money. Each stitch, each bead, each painted design told a story of resilience, of rising from hardship, and of creating something beautiful from struggle. But Amelie didn't stop at business. She remembered the girls who had nowhere to go, the ones left behind like she once had been. Using part of her profits, she launched a scholarship fund to support abandoned or neglected young women, giving them access to education, mentorship, and the tools to build their own futures. Watching the first scholarship recipients walk into her workshop, shy but hopeful, Amelie felt a warmth she could never have bought. She realized her success wasn't just measured in money or recognition. It was measured in lives transformed. One afternoon, after everyone had left and the workshop was quiet, Amelie stood among the tools, the colorful crafts, and the stories of every woman she had helped. She looked around, letting the calm sink in. The rain-soaked night from years ago flashed in her mind, the cold, the fear, the humiliation. But now she smiled softly. "The rain that night nearly washed me away," she whispered, "but it also taught me how to grow roots that no storm could destroy." Her story had become a legacy, a living proof that betrayal could fuel strength, that hardship could create purpose, and that forgiveness didn't mean weakness. Amelie had turned pain into power, and in doing so, she left a message for the world. No storm is too fierce when your roots are strong, no betrayal too deep when your spirit refuses to break, and no life wasted when you rise to build something bigger than yourself.